Hello, basketball fans. It's me, DC, here for Fantasy Basketball Analyzer. And I learned that if I get too close to the camera, I look a little shiny. Let's back that up. Sorry for the video being a little late today, guys. I'm solo parent for this week while my wife's out of town, and so I couldn't quite break away in the middle of the day to do a whole bunch of video recording and editing. But it's coming at you now. You'll only notice if you're part of the notification gang, because a lot of people watch on Monday. But if you are part of the notification gang, I apologize. Thank you. With enough business shopkeep out of the way, I'm here to help you get ready for week 5 by breaking down what's on the waiver wire, what I believe in a little bit, what I believe in a little bit more, and let's see where we go. If you haven't watched yet the week 5 primer video where I broke down the schedule, I will link to it right here, right now. I put those out on Friday now to help you get prepped, especially if it's a little bit later. But it's going to have the best streaming teams like the Warriors, hence I'm wearing their garb again. I'm going to get screwed when it's like the Lakers one week and I don't own any of their crap. Anyway, so the best teams for streaming are, let's bring up the schedule. I'll just show it. You should watch the other video though. I'd appreciate it. Golden State and Clippers are the prime ones. Clippers and Golden State were both good for the week that's just wrapping up right now, week 4. So you may already have some of those guys. And if you don't, there's not a ton to pick up there, just the way the roster rates work. Philly and Utah were already great pickups, so same type of thing. Next tier down, Denver, Toronto. Next tier down, Spurs. They only have 2 games, so you really don't want them. But if you're only talking about streaming, both their games are on streaming days. You might be able to do a quick pickup and then pivot to someone else. Say the Knicks have a back-to-back to end the week. They're 9-game days. Maybe you can't get them in there, but that's an option. I go more in depth about that, just general, how we're attacking the roster, how your roster should like flow to attack this week's schedule. So let's get into specific guys. I try to start off every week with just some must roster guys, people that aren't high enough. There aren't any shocks here. And if you're watching these videos, you're enough of an NBA fan. I trust you haven't left these guys out on your waiver wire, but maybe you're in a smaller league. So Horford's only at 88%. He just missed a game, but he is back. And when he's been back, he's been playing great. So 88% still seems too low. I understand the fears of it, but like by averages, he's giving you top 30 performance. You pick up and you roll with that headache, right? Also, Bobby Portis at 69%. Very nice. But it should be a little higher. I feel like fantasy Twitter is a little too gung-ho on it. Anytime Bobby Portis hits like 20 points, people are like, must roster, add him in all leagues, which he should already be added in all leagues. But it's like, he's going to average 15 and 8 for you. You know, that's solid, but it's not like drop what you're doing, cut a high. You know, I'm not cutting Josh Giddey or something to get Bobby Portis. Portis is going to contribute. He should be on, in every league, he should be on some team. Whether that's your team may depend on what you have or what you're aiming for, but 69% is still a little too low for how productive he's been, even if it's not flashy numbers. All right, my number 1 ad for the week isn't even about streaming, which is great. I love to try and go with more depth. It's Bones Hyland. Bones, I think, should get picked up right now if you've got the space for it. He's pretty hot. Points leagues, it's going to be even better, right? Let me just rattle off the last few box scores to you. Against Portland, he had 18, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. That was with 4 3-pointers, and he shot 55%. Love it. The big thing here is that his last 3 games have been over 20 minutes. So now that Denver is giving him a bit more consistent run. I mean, he had 21 minutes against Memphis like a week before that. But other than that, everything's been like single digits. If he's going to get consistent minutes, he's got more opportunity. The game before Portland, he played Atlanta. He had 18, 6, and 4. Before that, he had 12, 3, and 4. They're not like, oh my God, shocking numbers. But if he's potentially going to be starting, and if he's going to get these extra minutes, I want a piece of him. Denver also has 2 good streaming days. They play Philly on Thursday, and then Sunday against Phoenix. The downside is Denver only has 2 games next week. So if you pick him up for long-term thoughts, just know like it's not going to be super cozy next week. I think they probably only have 1 streaming day next week too. That's off the top of my head. We'll get to that when it comes. But I think Bones is worth a pickup. My next pickup, talked about him last week, is Devin Veselle. So I'm still being a little schedule agnostic because he's only got 2 games. So it's pretty hard to recommend him, at least their streaming days. But again, I talked about him last week, talking about him this week. He's playing pretty well. I'm starting to get curious about what his long-term impact could be for the team. Last game, he had 19 and 7. Game before that is only 20 and 2. It's not a very full box score, but I could expect a little more. It's also nice to get some blocks out of him on occasion. And He's shooting guard and small forward eligible, at least on Yahoo now, which brings me to something I wanted to start top of the show. So let's take a quick pin in our waivers and just talk about this. So now that we're getting ready for week 5, fantasy platforms have started to update the roster positions a little bit more. And I noticed this. So Devin Veselle now has small forward, which is great because that's something I kind of prioritize. It may not come up explicitly when I do the waiver videos. I may forget to mention it, but something I look for a lot is assists. It's hard to get assists and point guards after the high end of the draft, which means there's not always like viable guys assists because those are guys that run the offense. They're usually already rostered. So when we're talking waiver wire, I always keep an eye out for assists and I look for small forwards a lot. It's a hard position to get like good, consistent play out of because a lot of the superstars, wings are just so valuable in the real NBA that it impacts how our free agents look in your fantasy leagues. So Devin Veselle, I think would have been an interesting pickup anyway, but Yahoo just added him as small forward. It's going to be different on different platforms, but it's worth looking at. And I wanted to bring that up because there's a few others. So I'm just showing here what's popped up here. Now that there's been like I said, 12 to 14 games for most teams that they've got enough data to start getting some things. So like Kevin Porter has point guard now, which gives him that sweet 3 position eligibility. Desmond Bane has small forward now that Melton's back. I think that maybe I said Melton now that Dylan Brooks is back. Melton's been there. So now I think that gave him more reason to look and say, hey, Bane's still playing. He's in a little bit of a shooting rut right now, but I might, if LeBron's not back this week, I may end up playing Bane in my small forward slot if I don't have him. Precious Achiuwa got center, which I think is really interesting because I think he's kind of on the, I've got Precious in a few teams. Maybe he wasn't fully rosterable, but getting either forward or a center spot, depending on what your build is in a categories league, I think is a little interesting. So you can see the other things here. You know, Sadiq Bey got both forward spots. Mobley and Carter are now forward center, not just center, which is great because that's how the teams are using them. That actually happened last week. But I just wanted to show some of these updates. If you're on a different platform, give that a check. Let's get back to the waiver wire. Oklahoma City has 4 games this week because most teams have 4 games, but it's not a great week for streaming them. But Lou Dort is hot right now. There's a potential that he's going to continue to add value. So I would take a look. He scored over 20 points in his last 3 games. Again, not very full stat lines. A bit more interested in points leagues right now, I think. He had 20 and 3. He had 20 and 5. He had 20 and 5. Now, one of the games he got you 2 steals and a block. We haven't been seeing that the other games. I would expect to see that a little bit more out of Dort. Don't exactly know why it's not there, but he shoots really good percentages. And again, shooting guard, small forward, you get someone who can slot in there at small forward. When I was prepping for the show last night, he was only 47% rostered, so he made this list. But when I look at it right now, as of recording Sunday night, looks like he's about 54%, so it's a little over the cutoff. People have noticed that he's been hot. He's worth a look, but you might not get as much impact on him in your streaming slot for this week. So, you know, your mileage is going to vary. Choose what fits your need. Now let's get back to some schedule-friendly ads for this week. Give Eric Bledsoe a look. The Clippers have a great schedule for this. 3 streaming days, and the one non-streaming day is 9 games. You might get him in there against the Pelicans. So that's great. Bledsoe was a hot pickup at the start of the season. He came in really strong for the Clippers and then kind of had some dud games. Now we're back onto pretty good hot streak. I say that, and maybe when you watch this now, it's going to be silly because they're actively playing the Bulls right now in the first quarter. I got the game on right there. You can't see it, but trust me, maybe the reflections in my glasses. But the game before, he had 14-5 and 9. Game before that, he had 21-3 and 3, but with 3 blocks. So, he played 40 minutes to get that. So, I don't know. He's going to do that all the time. But if he's playing 26 minutes and is getting you 14 and 9, that's great, especially if you can get him in on at least 3 games this week. I think Bledsoe should be higher than 50%. He's not. He's right at the cusp. He's 48% right now. He was 43% last night when I wrote it. So, I would give him a look. Number 5 on my waiver list for this week is Tellin Horton-Tucker. This might be a little jumping the gun. That's why he came in at number 5. So he just played his first game for the Lakers, which was today, Sunday the 14th. He had 17-4 and then 1-1-1. Okay, nice, solid. Glad he showed up. Talen Horton-Tucker's floated with being rosterable throughout last season. Lots of people had it, but he was kind of on that cusp. He was never, he had moments that were like, wow, but also moments where I've described it before as like maybe the Derrick Rose like roster percentage where he's going to be out on a lot of waivers all season. You pick him up, you use him when he's hot, and you drop him. But he's back right now, and LeBron's out. We know that. We don't know when LeBron's back. He might be back now. They've switched LeBron to day-to-day. I'm not sure. But the Lakers have 4 games, and there's the potential here. So maybe that's less of a pickup, and it's more of a watch list. He's at 15% rostered, so I wanted to bring him up. That he played solid, played 27 minutes. They didn't ease him back into it, and that was noteworthy. If you want a guy just for streaming, I would give a look to Gary Payton. So he's only 18% roster, but he's really doing well with steals, and Golden State's got the great schedule, just like the Clippers, where you get 3 easy days to stream him. So, you know, it's kind of like Caruso, where a lot of his value is from the steals, but he's got a good schedule. It's going to get you some more points than Caruso as well. So if you're just looking to attack that one category in category leagues, I think Gary Payton's worth a pickup. It depends on what you'd have to cut for it. All right, now we're just going to kind of jump around my notes before we hit the watch list on some things. Grayson Allen's roster percentage is up to 67% now, which is great. I still prefer more in points league, but I'm also happy that his number's high enough that I don't really have to talk about it. As much as I like the Bucks, I don't really love Grayson Allen. So great. You guys are rostered. You can get a bunch of points of threes out of it, and we don't really have to talk about it. Glad to have that off my checklist. Draymond went down this week with a pretty bad thumb contusion, and I thought, man, Golden State's got a great streaming schedule. Let's take a look. I'm going to get to recommend Looney or something, but Draymond's a tough mofo. Came right back, played the Bulls. They beat the Bulls pretty bad. So Looney's at 5% rostered. I don't think it really came up. I thought it was going to get to, but I will keep an eye. But Draymond's played the last 2 games. I don't really think it's going to linger. That does kind of bring me into my next center discussion, though. Last week, I mentioned Frank Kaminsky as a watch list guy that I didn't really trust, but let's see how long Ayton's out. Then Kaminsky had a big game this week, 31 points or whatever. But he came back to reality. He's still being highly added, and JaVale McGee just had a better game than him. He had 19, 14, 1, and 3 blocks. JaVale McGee's at 12% rostered. Let me get a live number. What's Kaminsky at? He's at 40%. I think people overreacted to the 31 and 7, but then he had 8 and 6, 6 and 6. He's getting plenty of run, 27 minutes, 23 minutes. But if I'm just like, oh, I don't know, Ayton's out, I need a big, I would look at McGee as well. I don't expect either guy to be consistent, so don't take this the wrong way. I just kind of wanted to cool the Jets on. Glad Frank had a good game. There's a reason I mentioned him for the watch list, but, you know, someone even asked me on Twitter, I can't remember at the moment the handle, sorry about that, of, hey, should I pick him up? And I was like, no, it's fine. Like, if you got a guy to cut, go grab one of the centers. You're going to use him short term, but it's not going to change your league. Don't stress about it. All right, let's talk about the watch list. Some guys that didn't quite make the cusp. We can call them honorable mentions, but they're really not all honorable mentions yet. Darius Basley, 39%. I could have considered him for the waiver, but I'm not seeing it enough yet. Don't love Oklahoma's schedule, so I didn't really bump him up there, but I'd take a look. Kobe White, 17% rostered. He's now practicing full contact drills with like the coaches or whatever, but he's back in full contact. So we might be talking about him in a few weeks. Don't make a move yet, but just like put it on your radar. Killian Hayes, 13% rostered, had a really good game against Toronto. Really good. Like, I should bring this up. So he played 32 minutes, went 13, 7, and 10, shot 57%. This is nothing like what we've seen from him this season. So he's only on the watch list. But if this changes throughout the week, you know, Detroit has 4 games. It's not a great streaming schedule. That last game of the week against the Lakers, you could probably get him in there. But Detroit's got 4 games this week, 4 games next week. If it changes, and I don't get to talk to you until next Friday or something, or you don't follow me on Twitter, I just want to put Killian Hayes' name out there, flag him. Let's see what happens. Nazir Little, 12% rostered, had a really good game Friday night against Houston, which obviously isn't the strongest competition. He had 13 and 14, shot 60%. He followed that up today against Denver with getting 13 and 7, 2-2 and a block. So 2 steals and a block makes it nice. I think he's going to get a little bit of notice. Portland's only got 3 games, so he stayed on the watch list. Also, all 3 of their games are on higher volume days. So I don't know you get a ton of use out of him, and I'm not sure how long the time frame is of using it, but if you've got a need at small forward, he's out there in almost all leagues, and I would have felt a little silly if I didn't bring him up. And then Malik Monk might be worth keeping an eye on. I don't really believe it. I mean, if you're number 5 on my watch list update for the show, I guess I could probably skip it altogether, but the Lakers have been shorthanded. You know, he's point guard, shoot guard eligible. They've got a bad week for streaming, but it is 4 games if you needed a guy. You know, he had an all right game. It was 16 points, 4 assists. It's nothing great. Back on the 10th, he had 27 points, and that's where like my early notes from the week of checking box scores and watching games caught my attention, but he hasn't followed it up with that strong performance. Already mentioned Tellin, Horton-Tucker. They're obviously play different positions, but there's still the minute rotation there. Monk's probably not going to do it, but keep an eye in case I'm wrong on that, or Horton-Tucker has an injury flare up and they got to rest him or something. Monk might be useful in a spot situation. That should get you pretty much set for this week. If you got anyone you're considering that I didn't mention, or you've got questions on like who should I actually cut, because I don't know who you're talking about. Like if you've got Pokuševski on your team and you're sick of holding on to him, I'm in that situation. I think he's a fine cut now. But if you want to ask questions in the comments, I'd love to see it. Otherwise, you hit me up at Twitter at @BBallAnalyzer. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you back here Friday, if not sooner. Go out and win your week. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, please hit the like button and leave a comment down below. It helps me grow the channel. If you want more videos like this, hit subscribe or even the little bell will give you alerts. And I'll be back soon with another video for you.